Welcome back. Joining us on MorningLine. Thanks for being here on this Thursday morning. Amanda Kail's with us. She is from the Metro Nashville Education Association, Teachers Union. Nice to have you on, ma'am. I appreciate you being here. And we were talking, the producer and I, during the commercial break there, just about how, class learning versus virtual learning, and it's a valiant effort. It's a good thing. My concern is that it's just not the same, and it's not. It's not. It's not as good as it was when you're face-to-face with teachers and being in there. And I think the younger the students are, maybe in some ways, the more problematic it is. I don't know how any 5, 6, 7-year-old, the early grades and stuff like that, really sit and learn virtually, especially with a parent not right over their shoulder, and not all parents can. I worry that that's going to create a gap in the learning curve for these kids during this year, one that they're going to have to make up when things get back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the biggest groups that I think are the unsung heroes of this era are our kindergarten teachers, our first, second grade teachers, because they have been working so hard to figure out how to make this work. I'm a middle school teacher. Even imagining how you would teach kindergarten online is really, truly beyond me. But teachers have been working really hard to make that work as much as possible.
Hey, what's the trick to that? What's the trick to that, you think? I'm just curious. And I know you're right. It's not their fault. I mean, it's just crazy. The attention span of a small child and sitting in front of a computer monitor or whatever. What do you think the trick is to that? What have they told you? I mean, I guess they have to come up with creative ways to hold their attention visually somehow, maybe audio-wise as well. What's the trick to that?
I've heard there's a lot of songs.
Okay.
Singing a lot of songs together about whatever we're learning today. And I've seen teachers, get dressed up in costumes. I've seen teachers put on whole little dance routines. The creativity is just astounding.
Sure.
But to get to your point, sure. We know that this is not ideal. The online learning, the way that I think about it is, it's like a Red Cross shelter after a natural disaster. So it's in a Red Cross shelter, you've lost everything, but now you have a dry place to sleep and food, and you're safe, right? But that's not how you should live. That's not really life affirming, but it keeps you going through an emergency. And I think that the online learning is really kind of the same thing. It is far from ideal, but given the circumstances we are under, it is the best option that we have. There's no really truly good options right now. We either teach online or we teach in buildings, and if it's not safe to teach in buildings, then we have to teach online. And so that's just the reality of where we're at. The other thing that I will say is, I'm an EL teacher, which means I teach kids who come from other countries who are still learning English. And I've worked with a number of students who have had years of interrupted schooling, kids who come out of refugee camps, kids who've lived places where there were wars or there just weren't schools. And one of the things that I've always been truly amazed by is how quickly students catch up. I've had students come into my classroom not knowing how to read and write in their own language. And now they've had to learn it, in a new language and at a secondary level, which is really hard. But I've seen them catch up, and it's amazing to me how resilient children are. And so, yes, there may be a gap, but the other thing to think about is there's not really a gap because everybody is in the same place, right? Like, nobody has had a really excellent academic experience anywhere, right? Schools have been shut down everywhere. And even the schools that have not shut down, they've had to periodically shut down. They've had to send people home to quarantine. Things are not normal. And so, I think we have to really think about what we say when there's a gap. That implies some people have moved ahead while others have stayed behind. And I think everybody is kind of in the same place. And so, I think that, number one, children can recover that. And number two, I don't know that anybody has done particularly better than what we have done.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I guess when I meant gap is I'm just meaning comparatively speaking to a fifth grader and the level that they got through last year to this year. That's right. Everyone's in the same boat this year. I understand that. And as you move on, but just in terms of the quality of where you were then, everyone is going to be set back, in my opinion, this year. They're going to be set back, and they're not going to be in the same standard when you were in school or when I was in school, when it just kept moving. This is a setback for everyone. And it's no one's fault. I mean, everyone's doing the best they can, but it's just, it's a difficult thing to do. We've got a call from Ann on line 1. Ann, good morning. What's your thought, ma'am?
Good morning. First, let me commend Dr. Battle because she has stepped up to the plate and she has stood firm and she is relying on the data, and that's first what needs to be done. I spent 20 years with Metro schools, and 5 of them was spent in the kindergarten, first grade area. And my concern is the cleanliness in Metro schools and the way that Metro handles the custodial issues in Metro schools, and I saw it over the entire 20 years that I worked there, and that is one of the least funded areas in Metro schools, and that is an area where they do not get the supplies in which they need to keep the buildings clean. So what can you tell me as a grandmother and a parent that Metro has changed to keep these buildings clean and safe for these children to return to brick and mortar schools? Because I know that in the past, custodians have not had the supplies, nor have they had the number of custodians in the building to keep these buildings up to where they need to be kept in a COVID situation. So convince me that the buildings are safe, cleanliness-wise, that there's going to be soap, there's going to be hand sanitizer.
Okay. Yeah, I get her question, and it's a good one. And again, you guys as teachers are as concerned with this as I'm sure parents and grandparents like she is. What do you think as you look at the cleaning abilities in these schools day to day?
Well, you know, some years ago, the school board of that time, not our current school board, voted to outsource our custodial staff. That used to be something that was in-house, and because it was in-house, we had a lot of, you know, accountability for that. But we have contracted that out. That was a money-saving measure, and it was one of the things that we brought up as MNEA way back in the spring when the district was trying to decide whether to close or not, to say the conditions of our schools have not been clean for a long time. It's really common for schools to not have soap in the bathrooms. It's really common that things are not kept clean. And as long as we've continued to contract out, that has just been the case. We have, you know, the companies that do that work have a really high turnover rate. The wages are extremely low. And so, you know, it's hard to get people to commit long term to, you know, really have pride in their work and to be a part of the community. It used to be, you know, that the custodians were really a part of a school family, of the school community. Right. They were there for years, and they were a really important part of who we were, and they took pride in the facilities. But we haven't had that now for a very long time. And this is one of the points that as MNEA we've brought up over and over again. Underfunding our schools continues to hurt us in so many ways. We may have saved some pennies back in the day, but now in a situation where we need our schools to be clean and sanitary, and to be cleaned, you know, much more often than they have been in the past, we don't really have the capacity to keep up with that. I know that the district is trying its best. I know that they're working with those companies to try to make sure that our buildings are clean. But at the end of the day, that's a private company. We don't have oversight over that company. And so when we make these decisions to underfund our schools, to outsource our custodial staff, to our capital budget for the schools has been absolutely slashed for a while now. And so, we just keep having to patch things together. Our ventilation systems, our HVAC systems, need help and repair. I think a lot of teachers out there can tell you that the HVAC systems, have problems on a good day.
Sure.
And that's a result of just the decisions of what we've made to fund how we fund our schools.
Yep. And it's been a discussion that's gone on time and again. And when you make the cuts, you think you're making all these savings, and then you realize, well, what do we really lose? And you're right. You know what? I remember in the day knowing the custodians when I was in school, getting to know them. They were part of the staff there, and they did a lot more than just cleaning the school. They were friends. They, and they cared. So whereas you contract out, they come in, they leave. Good people, they do their job, but they're not going above and beyond. The custodians that were there on staff, they were special people. So, yeah. Well, listen, so much that will develop in the coming weeks, and we'll be following this, and we'd like to invite you back on as we get closer, and maybe when a decision is made on when they return and when you all return in classes, if that happens, and we'll get your take on that. Hopefully it'll work out for everyone.
Yes.
All right, Amanda.
Well, we have to keep it safe.
Yeah, that's got to be job one. Amanda Kail, thank you so much for joining us this morning, all right? You take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you again soon, all right? Thanks much to her. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to shift gears a bit. We're going to go to more open phones. Just, usually we do this for the full show, but I wanted to hear from her. But now, Ann, Joe, and others, if you want to call in, join in the conversation, what's on your mind? I'll set it more when we get back. But among other things, we're going to have some video, the very latest from the wildfires in California and Oregon. In fact, Medford, Oregon, where I started my television career more than 20 years ago, had to be evacuated, and I posted on Facebook, and a lot of people there in Medford lost their homes, and areas in southern Oregon up in flames. Just unbelievable. A photographer here, News Channel 5, was hiking out there, had to be evacuated from where he was on the trail there, the John Muir Trail. We can also talk, obviously, one of the big things in politics right now is Woodward's book that came out yesterday on President Trump, what he said in some of those interviews, how he handled COVID early on, what he told the American public, and why he chose to do it, and the president has responded to that. A lot more that we can talk about as well when we come back. So open phones for the remaining two segments, and if there's anything on your mind, give us a call, 737-7587. Back with more right after this.